Alright, today we're out on the range. We're going to be firing a Sindh Jezail. The Sindh area of India is on the west central part of the continent, subcontinent, and slightly north running up to what used to be Kashmir. These guns are distinctive because of their unusual style of stock. There's been a lot of information written about why this was done, all of it inaccurate. In fact, we don't know for sure, but in building these, this is the fourth contemporary Jezail I've made. I'm finding that this shape actually makes the gun very comfortable and easy to handle when shooting off a rest, which most of these guns were fired from. Almost all of them are rifled. Of the many I've looked at, I've only encountered a few smoothbore. They were designed primarily for hunting large game up in the mountainous areas of the Sindh region, and again going towards what is Kashmir, now is Afghanistan. And this cutout like this gives you a tremendous purchase on the gun. It puts your eye right in back of the sight. It's actually very comfortable. These guns saw, besides hunting, they saw a fair amount of use in warfare between the locals fighting for regional power. Also during the Sikh Wars of the mid-1840s, where they were used against the British for sniping at long ranges. Sometimes the British reported being shot at ranges up to 300 yards. Whether or not that's accurate or it just felt like 300 yards, even if you cut that in half to 150 yards, that's pretty good for a round ball rifle like this. They also used them in the India Mutiny of 1857 and 58. Both the peoples of India that were rebelling against the English and the East India Company, and those who stayed loyal to the English, both used these. And we read accounts, same thing in that particular war, where British soldiers and officers were hit at long ranges with matchlock Jezails like this. I mentioned matchlock. The majority of these were matchlock, but a lot of them were fit with English flintlocks. The Smiths of India loved English flintlocks, especially the large military locks or the high-end sporting locks. In later years, say from the 1880s up until the beginning of the 20th century, turn of the century, we do see some with percussion locks as well. So, about the construction of these guns, the majority of them that I've studied and restored have been either teak, mahogany, or rosewood stocks. Some of them are joined in two pieces to conserve on wood. Our contemporary build here is using American walnut. They will have different varieties of trigger guards. Here we're using a Model 42F type trigger guard off an East India Company musket. We're using an original late period English flintlock. This is the last of the English flintlocks before they switched over to percussion. You'll notice it has an internal frizzen spring. It has a safety catch to lock it at half cock. Stuff like this is very much what they would have used. In some cases, the Smiths of India and the Sindh region did hand-make copies of the English locks, and they worked, but they weren't quite as nice as the real thing. Barrels are secured with barrel bands. This one has 4. On the contemporary builds, I do put pin and lug assemblies there underneath this, so you can't see it, but it helps support the barrel even better. Again, as I begin to study these guns over the years, I'm finding more and more that I believe when these things left the shops when they were new, they were rather plain like this one. And I say this because we see them with different types of barrel bands, totally different types of engraving, different stampings, different shapes. I think over the gun's life, the owner or the people who owned them kept adding bands and things like silver and brass, copper wire to them to decorate them. So when we see them now, we're seeing them at the end of their lives as they've been added to and accessorized over the centuries. Like I said, this one represents one the way it would look when they come out of the shop. Another feature about these guns is their barrels, of course, being rifled. This one is 54 caliber. This is a Coleraine swamped barrel. We find the original guns with both octagon and octagon to round and completely round barrels. Sights generally will be found to be a bead of copper or brass that looks very much like our modern shotgun bead. Rear sights come in a couple of varieties. Some will be the half moon sight with all the holes drilled in it for different ranges. Many times we'll find just a simple block sight near the breech, and in some cases we'll find a block sight 10-12 inches from the breech, as we see in our contemporary long rifles. The ramrods on these guns are always iron. You never see one with a wooden ramrod unless it's a bad modern replacement. Ramrods will be found with decorative ends like we see here, and most of these will have internal ramrod channels. We do encounter a few with exposed ramrod channels, such as our contemporary build here. All of them that I've studied are fit with slings, so they can be easily carried. And you'll find some with, again, decorations will vary. This one just has a simple dot pattern. Some of them actually have pinstripe painted designs on them. Again, lots of added on extra brass, copper, silver wire over its lifetime. Generally, these guns were designed to shoot at least 100-yard ranges. And again, that's where I believe the purpose of this cutout. It allows the shooter to really secure themselves to the gun well. So what we'll do is we'll fire a couple of rounds through it so you can see what the gun looks like in action. This post is not to show my shooting capabilities for good or bad on a given day, rather that you can actually see me load and fire the gun and what it looks like in action. We will be shooting at 100 yards today, though, off of a rest, as these guns were intended. And that's not to say that these can't be fired off the shoulder. They actually handle pretty well, but accuracy with a rifle gun, you want to shoot off a rest, especially if you were shooting at large game like they were intending to, or sniping at the British. So let's put a couple rounds through it and we can see how it looks in motion. What we'll be doing is loading from a traditional brass horn. These horns were made everywhere from Morocco to Pondicherry, India. The other item I should bring up in this post is the all-purpose tool for these guns. And the same thing, these tools were made everywhere from Morocco to the ends of India. For the matchlock guns, you have a striking face for your flint and steel. The end of it here is to nap and chip your flints to get an edge. You have a screwdriver blade. You have a vent pick and a capstan wrench for changing the flints. Here, we'll actually tighten that up. You can actually see what this is for. Tighten that flint down good. And again, if you need to nap your flint. So that's what these tools are for. They did use priming powder in priming horns. I'm not using a traditional priming horn today. I've got one, but I didn't bring it along, so I'll be using a standard modern horn. So let's see what this looks like to load and fire it. We'll be shooting 50 grains of 3F today. You can see how these caps work. These things are pretty ingenious. You see it has this nice little locking. And as always, I put the powder well away from where I'm shooting. We'll be using an ox yoke 15 thousandths patch and a 530 round ball. Now for priming, it's close so you can see. I do what they did. I use extremely finely ground priming powder. They didn't use like our 3F or 4 or 6F priming powder, I should say. They actually ground their powder into a fine paste like this. It's almost the consistency of flour. I found that doing this ensures that the gun it's more reliable if you get a weak spark. It also burns faster and hotter. So, let's put a round down range. And you can see what this, now if you notice, you see how the back of my head rests right against that curve? It's almost like having a backrest. It's very comfortable. And my eye is actually level on top of the sight there. So it's this, you can see the position I have. Very conducive to accurate shooting. Take our safety off. Full cock. Get a sight picture here. There we go. We'll put another round down just so you can kind of see it again. And again, this stock is very conducive for comfortable shooting. The recoil is minimal and it's very steady when it's locked up against the back of my neck. So let's put another round through it. Clean the ash off of the frizzen and the tip of the flint. Now, the gun is a bit heavy. My originals, one of them is almost 12 pounds. It has a 50-inch Damascus rifled barrel. It's not conducive to shooting it off the shoulder. This one goes about 8 pounds. So shooting it off the shoulder isn't too bad. But again, for accuracy, we'd like to have it on a rest as they did traditionally. Out. Cover the rammer. See our priming powder there. Take our safety off, bring it to full cock, get a comfortable hold here, and acquire a sight picture. So there you go. Interesting guns to shoot. Certainly in modern times, you could use this for deer hunting or any kind of range use or rifle competition with smoothbore type guns. So there you go, a rifled Sindh Jezail from India, contemporary built, pattern off originals. So I hope you found our post interesting and learned some things about these guns and maybe prompt you to do some more studying about the history of India. It's a fascinating subject, especially with the weaponry. Okay, well thanks.